Attention, it is 7:30. It is Monday. It's March 21st, and you're at the City of Brainerd City Council meeting. Administrator Bergman, please call. I will call the meeting to order, and Administrator Bergman, please call the roll.
Stingline.
Here.
Erickson.
Here.
O'Day.
Here.
Stunek.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Pritchett.
Here.
Bevins.
Here.
And Badeau.
Here. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item number 4 is the approval of the agenda. Council, anybody wish to move to approve the agenda, amend the agenda, change the agenda, cancel the agenda?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by O'Day, thank you.
Second.
Second by Pritchett. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. 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 Opposed, same sign. The agenda has been approved. Item 5 is the consent calendar. A notice to the public that all matters listed are considered routine by the council and will be enacted by one motion. There'll be no separate discussion of these items unless good cause is shown prior to the time the council votes on the motion to be adopted by roll call. Is there a move to adopt the consent calendar?
So move.
Second. By Stunek, second by Johnson. Any discussion? Hearing none, Administrator Bergman, please call the roll.
Stingline.
Yes.
Erickson.
Yes.
O'Day.
Yes.
Stunek.
Yes.
Johnson. Pritchett.
Yes.
And Bevins.
Yes. The consent calendar has been adopted. Item 6 are council committee reports. Item 6A is Safety and Public Works Committee Chairman Mike O'Day.
Thank you, Mr. President. We did have 9 items on tonight's agenda, first of which was the Joint Powers Agreement for Lakes Area Drug Investigative Division and authorizing signatures. Motion coming out of committee was to request the City Council pass the resolution approving the Joint Powers Agreement with the entities involved as it is outlined in the attached agreement for the Lakes Area Drug Investigative Division and authorize signatures on the documents. I so move.
Second?
We have a motion by O'Day. We have a second by Pritchett. Any discussion?
I can explain a little bit.
If you'd like.
Questions would probably be directed to Chief Bessel. So this is something that they've been working on for a long time, since like 2012. But it's basically an agreement between the county, the city of Brainerd, and the city of Baxter to work together on drug-related issues.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Administrator Bergman, please call the roll.
Stingline.
Yes.
Erickson.
Yes.
O'Day.
Yes.
Stunek.
Yes.
Johnson.
Yep.
Pritchett.
Yes.
And Bevins.
Yes, that resolution is adopted. Please proceed, Chairman O'Day.
Thank you, Mr. President. Second item on tonight's agenda was the 2022 Bridge Inspection Request for Proposals. Motion coming out of committee was to recommend the approval of the attached request for proposals for bridge safety inspection services with a proposal due date of April 22nd, 2022. And I so move.
Second, Erickson.
Motion by O'Day, second by Erickson. Any discussion?
Yeah, this is just something that we have to do every 24 months, and we're coming up on the 24-month mark in October, so we want to get these proposals out there.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. 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 Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. The third item was a construction cost sharing agreement for pavement marking with Crow Wing County. This has to do with the striping, street striping. I can just explain that. We did a resurfacing of Oak Street last year, and apparently the paint doesn't stick as well when you do that the first year. And that's about 80% of our street striping in the city, so we want to get that fixed. Usually we do this every other year, so this is going to happen hopefully this year, and then we won't do it next year instead of doing it next year and not this year. Motion coming out of committee was to approve the attached cost share agreement with Crow Wing County for the roadway pavement markings. I so move.
Second.
I have a motion by O'Day, a second by Pritchett. Any discussion? Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. The next item was contract towing specifications and the authorization of bidding of services. Motion coming out of committee. One second. Was recommended approval of the attached specifications and authorized bidding for these services as presented. And I so move.
Second.
We have a motion by O'Day, a second by Erickson. Any discussion?
Sure.
Sure, Chairman O'Day.
The current towing agreement left some question for a lot of different things that have come up, I think, in the last few years. And so this language change just clears up a lot of confusion between the towing company, the city, the police department, and anyone who is getting towed.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Thank you, Chairman O'Day. Please proceed.
Fifth item was approval of plans and specifications to authorize bidding for East River Road improvements with the Mississippi Landing Trailhead project. Motion coming out of committee. Find it again. 1 second. You got it? To approve the plans and specifications as presented and authorizing bidding for the East River Road improvements concurrently with the MLT Park project. I so move.
Second.
Motion by O'Day, second by Pritchett, was it?
Yep.
Thank you. Any discussion? Chairman O'Day.
So this is just a portion of East River Road that is going to be right next to the new park that's going in. We're tearing out a parking lot to put in a park, so we're trying to put some parking back on the street. And this will be a streets project. It is not considered part of this parks project.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
What's that? Continue. Next item is the approval of plans and specifications and authorized bidding for the 2022 sanitary sewer collection system repairs. Motion coming out of committee on this one. Some of these get kind of wordy. This one's not bad. Staff recommended approving the attached plans and specifications and authorized bidding. Did we set a date? Okay. And I so move.
Second.
Motion by O'Day, second by Erickson. Any discussion? Chairman O'Day.
This is a big section of our wastewater collection underneath the trail in Rotary Park. It's apparently getting more and more leaky. It's the highest priority project for this collection system that we need to repair. It's not going to be cheap, somewhere in the $500,000 to $600,000 range. But it's something that we've had our eyes on for 5 years or so, and it's time to move forward with it. That's basically what I get out of it, but if anybody has more specific questions, we have, Scott Hedlund from SEH or Paul Sandy.
Any further discussion or questions of staff? Any further discussion or questions of staff? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the attached plans and specs and authorizing bidding, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Next item was having to do with the proposals for Harrison Elementary Oak Street Safe Routes for School project. The motion coming out of committee was to approve the attached. All right. Here we go. Approve the attached request for proposals for the Harrison Elementary Oak Street Safe Routes to School project with a proposal ending date of April 29th, 2022. I so move.
Opening date, isn't it?
Hang on, Chief. We'll take questions in just a minute.
Yeah.
We've got a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by O'Day, a second by Erickson. Chief Stunek.
Well, According to the thing, it says opening date. I think Mike said ending date.
Okay.
Just
Oh,
clarification.
yeah,
Just a
yep.
clarification, thank you, chief.
Yep.
It's the bid opening date, proposed opening date of April 29th. Hang on one second, let's see if Mike has, Chairman O'Day, anything you wish to add?
Well, I can just explain, this is basically opening it up for the rest of the work that needs to be done for the design work and the engineering. This is what we've done for, I believe, Lowell School and Riverside and Garfield. It's outside of the work that's set out for city staff. It's a grant. And so this is putting it out for bid for somebody to come in and do the work.
Thank you. Chairman Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to again thank city staff and the Public Works City Engineering Department. Paul, thanks for getting this grant application in, getting it approved. This will be really nice for the kids in my neighborhood who walk to school. We added the 15th and 16th north-south sidewalks with our street project last year. This will actually make crossing Oak Street a heck of a lot safer next summer. So thanks for getting this done.
Thank you, Chairman Johnson. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the attached request for proposals, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Thank you, Chairman O'Day. Please proceed.
Yeah, this next item, number 8, is a resolution having to do with a detour on South 6th Street. But the motion coming out of committee is to adopt the attached resolution in which enters into a detour agreement with MnDOT and allows proper signatures and amendments thereto on the agreement. I so move.
Second.
We have a motion by O'Day, a second by Erickson. Any discussion? Chairman O'Day.
The detour is going to use Willow Street for 70 days, so MnDOT's cutting us a check for $2,400.
Each.
Oh, that'd be nice. I doubt it.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, this is a resolution. Administrator Bergman, please call the roll.
Stingline.
Yes.
Erickson.
Yes.
O'Day.
Yes.
Stunek.
Yes.
Johnson.
Yep.
Pritchett.
Yes.
And Bevins.
Yes, that resolution is adopted unanimously. Please proceed.
Yes, our final item was something that came in kind of last minute, but it was a consideration of bids and award of contract for the NP Center segment of the Cuyuna Lakes State Trail Project. Motion coming out of committee, I don't have it exact wording in front of me, but I believe the motion coming out of committee is to award the contract to Knife River. And I so move.
Second.
We have a motion by O'Day, second by Pritchett, to award the NP Center segment of the Cuyuna Lake State Trail Project to Knife River. Any discussion? Chairman O'Day.
Yeah, the bids did come in over, was it 15% over?
Those are the numbers there.
Yeah. So we had engineer's estimate of $328,728. This low bid came in at $375,705.98. And this is what we've been in closed session a few different times for. It's a section of the trail that's going through the NP Center and reconfiguration of the parking lot all the way up to the swamp, as well as along 13th Street. It's a big part of connecting Cuyuna to the Paul Bunyan Trail and all the rest of the trails in this city, but obviously things are getting more expensive as we go along here.
Excellent. Any further discussion? I have one question just for the public, and maybe Mr. Sandy can answer, maybe you can. Where does the money come for this? $375,000 roughly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the city was awarded $1.1 million from the DNR for construction of as much as we can get done of this trail. So 127,000 of that 375 is reimbursable or DNR reimbursable. The other 248,000 is a local cost that the deal we made with Mr. Higgins to have easement to his property. That was the agreement that the city and Mr. Higgins entered into.
Thank you.
Local cost.
Thank you. Mr. Sandy. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of awarding the NP Center segment to Knife River, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Anything else, Mr. Chair?
End of report.
All right, Personal and Finance Committee Chairman Gabe Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have 4 items on the agenda, but a few more action items. The first item is approval of MOAs for the 2021 IUOE Central Pension Fund effective date. And the motion is to approve the attached MOAs between the City of Brainerd and IUOE Local Number 49 to amend the 21-22 union contracts, which corrects the effective date to the first payroll in April 2021 for the increased 2021 Central Pension Fund contributions for its members. And I so move.
Second.
We have a motion by Johnson, a second by Stunek. Chairman Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. President. When we assigned the contract with the unions, we didn't clarify when the contributions would start. This memorandum of understanding, or these memorandum of understandings, clarifies when that start date is.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Next up is to consider proposals for the charter contribution organizations. We broke this down since there are 3 charter levies. We broke it down into 3 separate motions.
yeah,
Did you want to ask the
If I
attorney
could,
something? Absolutely.
I hate to interrupt, but I think this would be best prior to a motion and your discussion. I asked the attorney to clarify something for me, because we've had a recent charter change. And that is, if you would, Mr. Attorney, the 2 questions I had were, one is, when we levy or, levy for these various items, are we required, does all the money in each category need to go to a single entity? Is question number 1. And if not, can it be split up? And can any of it be withheld, or does it all have to be distributed at one time to one entity on one contract? Thank you.
Mr. President, so the language in the charter, for example, under paragraph number 3 there, it talks about the annual amount being levied for an entity within the city limits to provide community action programs, an entity. So it's written as a singular. Same with paragraph 4, levy for a program for the benefit of senior citizens or to a subsidized nonprofit senior citizens organization. Again, singular. Paragraph 5, a levy for an arboretum or a green space. Well, actually, there's a couple words missing there, but green space organization. Intent there again, and arboretum, that's singular. So they're all written singular, presumably because back when the charter was originally created for these different purposes, there was a particular entity in mind for these dollars. So that aspect has not changed. It's still written in the singular. So that's the way it sits now, that it was intended to be used for a single organization.
Thank you. So Chairman Johnson, if you were going to consider, and I don't know because I wasn't in PNF, to split this at all, you'd have to, according to our attorney, rephrase the charter amendment that just went through. And I don't know, would that have to go back to charter, to the Charter Commission?
Yes, the way that we've been modifying the charter is to basically have the Charter Commission make recommendations to the City Council. So they make the recommendation, the City Council agrees with the recommendation. Because the 2 units are in agreement, that allows the City Council to adopt the change by ordinance. That's frankly, the simplest and fastest way of doing it.
Thank you. Everybody understand that? Okay, Chairman Johnson, thank you very much.
Well, Mr. President, I don't think you had all of your questions answered. So we shall levy the money. It is for an organization, but he didn't follow through on, does it all need to be spent on the one organization, or can we withhold some back?
Yeah, so Mr. President and Mr. Johnson, so with respect to that, it has never gone into that kind of detail in here. It doesn't address the issue, let me put it that way. So that's really up for, as far as I'm concerned, that's up for the City Council to determine how to interpret that, whether that's can withhold it. There says there shall be a levy, so there's going to be money levied. The word is shall. So, but what is done with it outside of for the benefit of a program or for those different three things, how exactly that is spent on those three programs, it doesn't provide that kind of detail. So I would say that that's up to the city council to make that determination.
I'm not sure that clarified, because if you have to give it all to one. I'm just, Chairman Johnson, I'm gonna ask you another question, because this begs this, is, I know you have recommendations this evening, but if the recommendations would be different, I don't know if we're under an obligation to answer the RFPs this evening or not. And that I don't know the process well enough. I know we had some proposals for all three. Mr. Attorney, are we under an obligation to answer the RFPs this evening with this information you've now clarified for us?
Mr. President, I haven't seen the RFPs, but generally speaking with RFPs, there is no obligation by the city to move forward with the project that the RFP is concerned. That's really up to the council as to what to do and how to move forward on that.
Okay. Thank you. Back to you, Chairman Johnson. Good luck.
Thank you, Mr. President. And the reason I wanted clarification on must we spend it all, and it doesn't sound like we shall spend it, because what if we only got a proposal that, hey, I want like $10,000 to plant 7 trees in the city of Brainerd. We don't have to give them 100,000. We can just give them just the 10 if that's what the proposal. But we didn't receive that as a proposal, so we'll move on with the proposals we did receive. And we broke it down into 3 different sections. The first one we started with the Arboretum, and the motion out of committee is to send to the Charter Commission to meet to clarify the language change they instituted last year that said there shall be an arboretum or green space organization within the city limits of Brainerd. And I so move.
Second.
We have a motion by Johnson, a second by Stengline. Any discussion? And this is to refer back to,
To the charter, to make sure this is kosher compared to their language, yeah.
okay? Everybody understand? Any discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Back to the Charter Commission for the for the green space.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next one up, we did Brainerd Community Action, being that they were the only organization to propose for the events and community action programming, and the motion is to enter into a 5-year contract with Brainerd Community Action in the amount of 1.5% of the previous year's levy of each year, and I so move.
Second.
We have a motion by Johnson, a second by Stunek. Any discussion? Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. That motion carries.
Okay, and then we had a split vote on the next one, so I'll pass it over to Kevin for the motion.
Okay, the motion coming out of committee is to approve the 1.5% funding of the levy to the center, and I so approved.
Second.
We have a motion by Stunek, second by Stengline. Any discussion? Chairman Johnson.
Yeah, if Kevin doesn't want to speak to the motion, I'll just say why I voted against it. I think I support funding the center, but these levy dollars should be used to benefit the citizens of Brainerd from who the dollars were taxed, right? They shouldn't be benefiting the region or people from elsewhere. And I looked on their website, and if we bought membership dues for every senior citizen in Brainerd, we have 14,395 people in Brainerd. 17% of them are senior citizens. If we bought membership dues to the center for each and every senior citizen in the city, it would be $50,000. So I would support funding the center up to a level of $50,000. I don't support funding beyond that, because I didn't see in their proposal where there was any benefit to the citizens or taxpayers or the senior citizens of Brainerd outside of what they just do for people everywhere of any age. So that was my thinking.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Any other discussion? Then I will speak to the motion. I understand your argument, Gavin. I appreciate you standing up for the taxpayers, for the city of Brainerd. I mean, tax dollars are sacred. But I'll give you an argument on the other side. I am not a member of the senior center, and I will guarantee you I benefit way more than $50 from what they do in our city. I mean, I'm there weekly with there's something going on. So I may not be a senior citizen, but I'm glad to see some of my tax dollars go towards the senior center. I think the operation there is just fantastic. And it benefits way more than just the seniors in the city of Brainerd. So that would be my argument to continue to fund it. And I have a second question. What is the term of these three? 5. 5 years. Okay. All right. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Hearing none. This is just a voice vote. All in favor in the affirmative, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign.
Right.
And that motion carries. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. The next item on the agenda is the discussion of implementing the street lighting policy. And we had some discussion. I mean, we've been having discussions about street. SP&W has had a lot of discussions about streetlights. Let's just be real clear here. We had a real brief discussion, and we decided that the motion would be to implement the street lighting policy when we are reconstructing streets, in addition to going back to streets that have updated conduit from the last 10 years and updating high-traffic streets lighting as soon as possible. And I so move.
Second.
I have a motion by Johnson, second by Stunek. Any discussion? Chairman Johnson.
So the staff recommendation was, let's just do it when we reconstruct the streets, because there are so many variables, and we might need some directional boring, or we might need to tear up some streets to get some conduit in, or and even if we wanted all of the street lights done next year, the electric department doesn't have the staff to get out there and change every single light, right? So we'll just do it as we update the streets. But then we were talking that we did 6th Street recently, or half of it, and we did Oak Street recently, we did Mill Avenue in the last 10 years. So we have some high traffic streets that BPU said the conduit is updated there, where all we need to do is throw in some new poles. So that's where our recommendation is, go as we're doing streets, but plus hit up some of these high traffic streets as soon as we can.
Thank you, Chairman Johnson. Any further discussion? Chairman O'Day.
You just mentioned as soon as we can. What is as soon as we can?
Immediately. There's supply chain issues. We can't get the lights tomorrow.
As soon as we get the product.
As soon as we,
Means after this meeting, we're
going out tomorrow? Okay.
you're shoveled to the next meeting,
All
Mike.
right, all right. Exciting.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of the implementation of the street lighting policy as outlined by Chairman Johnson, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. President. The last item on our agenda is an update on the request for funds to be returned to the city from Lakes Area Media Collaborative. And the update is there is no update. And that is the end of the report.
Very disappointing. Thank you, Chairman Johnson. We will move on to item 7, which is unfinished business. Item 7A is the call for applicants. The Honorable Mayor Bedell.
Definitely honorable, that is for sure. Call for applicants. This is the part of the meeting in which I ask our citizens to step forward and be a part of our commissions. We have wonderful attendees in our audience tonight that are a member of our commissions. They are the people that do the work behind the scenes that make sure that our city operates. I have in my hand here an application. This is what it looks like. Very simple. All you gotta do is put your name on it, tell us a little bit about yourself, why you're interested in being a part of said commission or committee, and that's how we get things done. So, having said that, you can find them at www.ci.brainerd.mn.us/boards. And we have applications available for the current positions. Cable TV Advisory Committee, 2 terms expiring 2022, 1 term expiring 2024. Charter Commission, 1 term expiring 2022, 1 term expiring 2025. Rental Dwelling License Board of Appeals, 3 terms expiring 2022. That is one committee with a very long name. 3 terms expiring 2022. We also have, that's right, Economic Development Authority, 1 term expiring 2022 and 1 term expiring 2026. Also, just a quick note before you do yours, I do have in my hand, this is an application for the Water Tower Committee, but it did not get in time for it to actually be in your recommendations. However, I will say that if you're out there, Water Tower Committee, still looking for people are interested, and I have proof.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As council president, I have one commission opening. That's the Planning Commission, one term to expire 2023, and the Ad hoc Water Tower Committee with a line of people to sign up.
Well, technically, it's a dot, so to call it a line.
It's a very short line. Has 2 positions available, so even if this applicant makes it, there's still room. Next up is new business, and item 8A is the resolution establishing the Parking Commission as a standing commission. And this is under Mr. Chansky. Mr. Chansky, is there anything in, that you'd like to add to the?
No, Mr. Chair, other than, again, this is out of the recommendations that the Parking Commission made to you that you accepted on February 22nd. As part of it, again, was to reestablish the Parking Commission as a standing committee so that they can meet at least, as you can see in the resolution, at least twice a year to review their recommendations and make sure things are working as they should and make changes as necessary and to address any other issues regarding parking that the council would like to send to them. The only thing I do want to point out is, as part of their recommendation, if you remember, the commission recommended that the current members of the Parking Commission be appointed as the initial members of this new Parking Commission to ensure at least continuity off the bat as these recommendations get implemented. As you'd be appointing a full board right off the bat, and we don't necessarily want all terms to be expiring all at the same time, we are recommending, as you can see in your packet, that terms be, the 5 terms be staggered. What the recommendation is, 1 to expire 12/31 of 23, 1 to expire 12/31 of 2024, 1 to expire 12/31 of 2025, and 2 to expire 12/31 of 2026. We are recommending again that you appoint the existing, after you adopt the attached resolution, appoint the existing commission of Kevin Yeager, Wayne Erickson, Riley Weber, Brenda Billman-Arndt, and Chuck Marone to the Parking Commission, and then that you, Mr. President, then select which term each member will serve.
Thank you, Mr. Tansky. Any questions of staff? Then seeing none, we will move on to the first portion, which is the attached resolution establishing the Parking Commission as a standing committee. Is there a motion to adopt that resolution?
So moved, Stingline.
Motion by Stingline, second by O'Day. Any discussion on that portion of it? Any discussion on that portion of it? Hearing none. Administrator Bergman, please call the roll.
Stingline.
Yes.
Erickson.
Yes.
O'Day. Stunek.
Yes.
Johnson. Pritchett.
Yes.
And Bevins.
Yes, that resolution is adopted. The second part is the appointment of the 5 standing commissioners to the 5 positions as outlined in your packet. So I have a recommendation, and I will parse this by saying none of these people have been contacted. So I'm not sure that any of them will want to, but Mr. Mayor.
I believe in their document to the city, they asked to become a continuing committee, did they not? And we have one of the members here, but I believe that was a part of the document that they gave.
I don't think it's gonna matter.
Well, I'm just
They can
saying that
always
I
say-
believe these people have stepped forward and said that they are interested.
My grandmother believes all boys are bad. It's axiomatic. No, we're gonna move forward. Okay? This is not hard, this is not difficult. Okay, we're not gonna spend a lot of time on this. They can always say no. They can always say yes and tomorrow quit. These are volunteer positions. My motion, which I cannot make, but my recommendation is the 1 term to expire 2023 would be for Mr. Marone. The 1 term to expire, and these all expire December 31st. The next one, 2024, would be Mr. Wayne Erickson. The next one to expire 12/31/2025 would be Brenda Billman-Arndt. And the last 2 would be current Chairman Yeager and Riley Weber. Is there a motion to accept that? So moved, O'Day.
Second.
Second by Stunek. Now, any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. See how easy that was?
Mr. President,
Yes.
I have a task for the Parking Commission. Should I just wait till council member reports, or should I?
No, I think right now it would be more appropriate, because we're all thinking parking.
Yeah. So I received a phone call about parking. Kevin, you can take this to your committee, or Mr. President. The committee can address this at their next meeting, but we did vote for enhanced enforcement downtown, and some people are noticing the enhanced enforcement, but they're questioning whether they are part of the downtown core. That they're like close, but we shouldn't be in the enhanced enforcement area. We should be in the place where they never enforce area. And I don't know what the correct solution is, but I think that when I voted for enhanced enforcement, I was thinking the sidewalks that have pretty bricks and stuff that need to get tore up and fixed and everything. I wasn't thinking expanding off into south of Maple and all that, but
I bet our chairman, our newly appointed.
but that's what I've received phone calls on, and that's what I think, so I'd love you guys to take it up
Chairman
and
Yeager.
let us know.
Anything you can share.
Absolutely, Mr. Chair. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Alderman Johnson. Just real quickly, I would like to say that I as well have received calls regarding the exact same comment. And I can tell you that that will be on our very first agenda item on our next meeting. And we will be taking a look at that exact consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Before you sit down, please state your name and address.
My name is Kevin Yeager, 325 Bluff Avenue, and I will be here till December of 2026. Thank you,
And with
everyone.
this little impromptu report, does anybody else have anything they wish to add to Kevin? Hang on one second, somebody's ahead of you. Any of the council? No. Thank you, Chairman Yeager, for life.
Absolutely, Mr. Chair.
Chief Bestel, anything you'd like to add on how things are going? We're talking kind of enforcement.
Yes, we endured exactly what we anticipated. I talked to Mr. Yeager about some of the concerns with other council members over the last couple of weeks. And so I think our enforcement is good. It's probably understanding what we were going to do and what's fair and consistent in downtown. So I will be at that meeting, and we'll look at what options we have.
Thank you, Mayor Bedot. Thanks for your patience.
This is 2 points. I just want to ask that we also include within that discussion the potential for leasing on-street parking spaces as well, potentially on Maple, maybe not. Just want to throw that into that mix since we're talking about it. And then lastly, I just want to ask for clarification from you if I'm still going to be the liaison for that group.
Yes, he is.
I just want to ask because I'm not allowed to speak, so I just want to make sure that I'm allowed to be the liaison.
Can we take back that money that we gave to community action?
Oh, no. Wait a minute.
Thank you, Mr. Yeager. Anything else?
Technically, the Charter Commission could always revisit the language, including,
This is a parking commission discussion, not charter.
State of the Parking Commission.
Anything else, Kevin?
nothing at all.
You may
Thank you.
be seated.
Thank you.
All right, so I believe that handles the parking commission business for this evening. Item 8B is a resolution reestablishing the precincts and polling places. Mr. Bergman, this one's on your docket. Anything you wish to add to what's in our packet?
There is nothing that we wish to add to what is in your packet unless you have questions of us.
Any questions of the staff looking for council to adopt a resolution establishing the precincts and polling places?
So move.
Motion by Stunek.
Second.
Second by, Pritchett. Any discussion? Any discussion? Hearing none, Administrator Bergman, please call the roll.
Stingline.
Excuse me, just one question.
We have a motion and a second. Can I have you hold off? I really would.
Okay.
I mean, unless it's detrimental to how we're gonna vote.
We don't have a
I would say it
resolution.
is because we have to set a polling place for Ward 4. We need to determine what we're going to do with that location. If we're going to keep it be a combined polling location and have one location at St. Francis go outside the ward and use the Halverson Taylor Life Center, or if we want to reuse and move the Trinity to the college and then move that. So there was 3 different options.
We don't
there.
have an attached resolution. That was my problem.
Oh,
There
God.
isn't, there's not a draft resolution that's attached?
Okay. So, The motion that I asked for is out of order because there is no adopting a resolution because it's not attached. So let's go back and we're gonna handle that part in just a moment, okay? Let's go back, since the resolution or the motion was out of order, because I used the word attached, let's go back to Ward 4. And just briefly, Finance Director Hillman, the issue is on Ward 4, which is yours, Gabe, is to just use one or to use two, correct?
Correct.
And the suggestions are one being, I'm sorry.
Having St. Andrews.
Yeah, right, St. Andrews. And the other suggestion would be to use two, which is St. Andrews and the Halverson
Halverson Taylor Life Center.
Life Center, which is on the corner of 8th and Oak. It's the old Presbyterian church.
Correct.
Okay? So y'all understand the issue? Gabe Johnson, this is your ward. What do you think your people want to do?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think my people love voting, especially for me, and I'm up this year, so let's make this very easy for them.
I've heard.
No, I prefer to have two voting locations. The problem with the two options where we can get voting locations is they are outside of the ward, so people are traveling further to vote. And we have been, since the pandemic, last couple cycles, had both precincts in St. Andrews. So for this election cycle, I think just keeping St. Andrews is probably the best solution, with hoping moving forward, we can get back into Harrison School. When they kicked us out, it was a security issue. They have since reconstructed. The gym can be accessed from outside and blocked off from the school, so that might be a potential in future years. But I think for this year, St. Andrews is the best solution.
Appreciate that. Before I call for that motion, is there any other discussion on just that issue? Hearing none, Gabe, is that a motion?
Yeah, I move to use just St. Andrews for both precincts in Ward 4 this year.
Thank you. Second by Pritchett. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Okay, so now back to Connie.
So I thought the resolution was included in there. It is important that we get that passed tonight, or we have to have a special meeting because the redistricting needs to be finalized by March 29th. I can email it quick to Sean and we can get it up. It is done.
Does anybody feel they need, you all have the polling places in your packet, but we don't have the resolution. Mr. Attorney, is there any reason why we cannot adopt the resolution unseen?
Well, Mr. President, just for the sake of public knowledge of the language of the resolution, if we could just have Sean pop it up here, I think she's sending it to him, that would be best.
Thank you. We'll take a second and see, or do you want to step out of line and go to, man, we better not do that.
No, they're gonna get messy.
I think we'll just take a 2-minute and see if our IT director can get this up on the screen.
Hope we can get back into Harrison though. Have a secured entrance.
Keeping it at one spot.
Yes, I'm sending it. Hold on here.
Plug it in, plug your computer in.
Okay, let me get this. Hold on.
Play it on.
Where you're getting the big bucks, Sean.
Work, remember that in 3rd grade? Works well under pressure. You got that N for needs work.
No, I have not.
Could you imagine?
Gabe, as you hadn't said anything, we'd be done.
I would have voted no though.
Yeah,
I read a sentence.
yeah, but we're used to that. Nobody pays any attention.
I get it.
You can always count on the no game.
I had a constituent tell me today, whenever I'm on the losing side, it's always 6-1. And I had to think, there's some truth to that.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're used to that.
Yeah.
Come back with donuts.
Sean, am I on?
My second favorite vote total. I love a good 4-3. Then
Someday I'm gonna vote no, just to vote no.
I have it on, yes, I'm ready to go.
Vote no on the fire department budget this year.
Oh, no. It'll be a hose battle.
Next fall, when they do the open house,
But I can't
instead of
move
having
it.
the barrel up there, it'll be you.
Just have the kids spraying cheese too.
I sat in the dunk tank
And
one
it'll be
year.
32 degrees out.
I don't care about that.
Yeah.
For the polar plunge.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
going to suggest reading it.
So we have the resolution up, but I am frozen and cannot move now.
See, it is 32 degrees. Technology, don't you love it?
Any solutions, IT, Sean?
You tried shutting it off and turning it back on?
Oh.
You want me to come over and help you? I'm really good at IT stuff. Bless you. That's not a resolution either.
Okay, so here we are. Here's the resolution. We did not change any of the boundaries. And so I had precinct 1-1 highlighted because that was one of our options to move that to the college, so that would be
Oh,
unhighlighted.
heavens, yes.
Precinct 1-2 will still be at the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints on Buffalo Hills. The Ward 2, Ward 2-1 will be at Essentia Health Sports Center. Then we have precinct 2-2 will be at the center. Ward
Look
3.
at that, there you go, Gabe.
Ward 3,
Only
we actually have
$100,000.
three precincts. However, 3-1 will be at the Northeast Fire Station, and 3-2 and 3-3 will both be at the Bethlehem Lutheran Church on the corner of 210 and Mill Avenue. Precinct 3, we thought maybe we could absorb that, however, we can't because it's a different legislative district, and so we cannot cross those boundaries there, so we have to maintain that as a separate precinct. But because there's only 10 voters, we will just leave it combined with 3-2. Ward 4, I had that highlighted there as a couple options there, so we'll change that to just be St. Andrew's Catholic Church on Willow Street. And then precinct 4-2 will also be at St. Andrew's Church.
I move to adopt the resolution.
Wait. What's the deal on the first one? You had in green, is there something we have to do on that?
No, we do not have to. I just had it highlighted it in case the council wanted to switch 4-1 to the college, and then we could switch Trinity to being the second ward, or the second precinct in Ward 4. But you did not do that, so I just had it highlighted in case.
We
there was a
haven't
change.
actually had it in front of us. Mr. Pritchett, is this you?
Yes,
What do you think? Leave it as is with,
leave it as is.
sure, okay. Okay. Mr. Johnson,
I'd move to adopt the resolution with precinct 4-1 being just St. Andrews.
we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Pritchett. Motion by Johnson, second by Pritchett. Any discussion on the resolution? Any discussion on the resolution? Hearing none. Administrator Bergman, please call the roll.
Stengline.
Yes.
Erickson.
Yes.
O'Day. Stunek.
Yes.
Johnson. Pritchett. And Bevins.
Yes, and just so you know, I had this as my quickest item of the evening. We seem to make it the most complicated. Next up is item 8C, which is first reading for proposed ordinance 1524, amending city code section 320 administrative citations. Mr. Chansky, anything you wish to discuss on this first reading of ordinance 1524?
Nothing that's not in the packet, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so this is looking for a motion to conduct the first reading of this ordinance, 1524, amending section 320 of the city code, and dispense with the actual reading of the ordinance, which must be a unanimous vote.
So moved.
Motion by Pritchett, second by O'Day. Any discussion? Any discussion? All in favor of holding the first reading, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, same sign. That motion passes unanimously. Next up is number 8D, which is the first reading of proposed ordinance 1525, amending the city code section 425, the rental housing maintenance code. Mr. Chansky.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This language did come before you back in January, and you did direct us to bring this back as an ordinance in March, and that's what we are doing with proposed ordinance 1525. I'd just like to point out this is a full repeal and replace. So what this ordinance does, it repeals the current section 425 and then replaces it with the language that is in the ordinance.
Thank you. Any questions of staff? Hearing none, we're looking for a motion to conduct the first reading of proposed ordinance 1525, an ordinance amending section 425 of the city code and dispense with the actual reading of the ordinance, which must be a unanimous vote.
So move.
Second.
Motion by Stunek, second by Erickson. Any discussion? Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Next up is item 8F, the first reading of proposed ordinance 1527, amending the city code section 515 zoning code and the official zoning map.
Mr. President,
Mr. Champ, yes.
I believe we skipped one. Should be on 26.
1526, yeah.
Oh, my apologies. Thank you, Mr. Erickson. Let's go back to E, which is the first reading of proposed ordinance number 1526, amending the city code section 450, the property maintenance code. Thank you, Mr. Erickson. And this is Mr. Chansky.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is likewise, like 1525, is a complete repeal and replacement of section 450. Just as a reminder, this came as a recommendation from the Rental Housing Committee to do what we similarly did to the building code back in 2019, where instead of having the language directly in the ordinance that anytime there's a change of state statute or federal law that we would have to go then amend, what this does, it repeals the current section 450 and then replaces it with the International Property Maintenance Code. So anytime the International Property Maintenance Code is updated, this code would be updated, and then we would only have to update our code if there are specific things in the new IPMC that don't fit Brainerd. You'll see in the proposed ordinance there are a number of amendments to make, for just specific things, to make it Brainerd specific. If you look at the IPMC, a lot of those sections that you see in that code, it says like fill in entity. So that's essentially what those subdivisions are doing, is filling in specific things that the ordinance calls to fill in or that are Brainerd specific amendments. That is all, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chansky. Any questions of staff? Hearing none, we're looking for a motion to conduct the first reading of proposed ordinance 1526, an ordinance amending section 450 of the city code and dispense with the actual reading of the ordinance. Note that this actual reading vote must be unanimous to pass. Anybody like to make the motion?
So move.
Motion by
Second.
Pritchett, second by Erickson. Any discussion? Any discussion on ordinance 1526? Hearing none. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Item F, first reading, proposed ordinance 1527, amending the city code section 515, zoning code and the official zoning map. Mr. Chansky.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to come up here for this one. This is kind of a big item tonight, as we're coming before you to ask you to conduct the first reading for the adoption of our new zoning code. As you may remember, this process started back in October of 2020. So staff and the Planning Commission, as well as yourselves, have been working very hard over the last 15 months to bring this product to you. In just a moment, I'll ask Jennifer to come up and give you a very quick walkthrough of this new code. But I can say that I think we're very proud of this. Is it an absolutely perfect document? No, it's not. There are items in here that the Planning Commission has already identified that are items for further discussion. But then again, when it comes to zoning code, it's meant to be a living document. It's meant to be a document that changes as the community changes. That being said, this is our current zoning code. This is what we are asking you to consider adopting. If you look just at the size, I believe that this is a much better improvement over what we have. It is a much better representation of our community as it is today, as well as where I believe the city council has identified we want to be into the future when we look at our comprehensive plan and our future land use map. So I'm very excited and proud of this document. So at this point, I'll invite Jennifer to come over and she'll just give you a quick overview of what this new document is.
Jennifer, you should probably state your name, since not everybody in here knows you, and your address, and can be a business address.
I would be happy to, Mr. President. My name is Jennifer Haskamp. I'm the owner of Swanson Haskamp Consulting. We are located at 246 South Albert Street in St. Paul, Minnesota.
Thank you.
You are welcome. So I'm very excited to be here this evening, and I've also been directed to be extremely short, which is not my strength. So with that, we are going to jump right into it. We have been working for the last 16 months on this process. I've met with you folks several times, and I think we've got a great document. And as David mentioned, we have cut it down by, I think, if my memory is right, 75 pages or something like that. So I feel like that's a huge success. So if we could go ahead. So I'm going to give you just a brief overview of what we heard at the Planning Commission with the public hearing. Very briefly go over the outline because you have that in your possessions this evening, and then just highlight at the same time some of those key changes and updates that occurred within the document. I just have to put this up because we're at the end and I like being at the end. So from that perspective, I just want to highlight the fact that we've been working a long time. We're almost there. We've got this evening, and then we've got obviously your second reading, hopefully. There were 2 deliverables that we were charged with bringing to you. The first one being the code, which is obviously what we're going to talk about this evening. The second one being a video that could be used to highlight what the changes are, and then also use it as a way to promote yourselves from an economic development perspective. Oftentimes, zoning's not thought of as economic development, but really it can be, especially if you make improvements that make it easier to do business and development here in the city. So here is an overview of the outline of what was in your packets this evening. We did restructure the zoning code fairly significantly, but we did reuse several of your existing sections. It wasn't a full rewrite. So what I did is go ahead and give you a sense of in each section what happened. The title, no significant changes. We rearranged things. Zoning districts, full rewrite. We went ahead and we consolidated, I believe we got rid of about 6 zoning districts approximately to make life easier, hopefully, for you, for staff, and your planning commission. Allowed uses. We pulled the uses out of your zoning districts purposefully. The intent was really that your zoning districts focus on the form, the development, the physical character of areas. Allowed uses focuses on just the uses and how those are permitted, conditionally permitted, or interim uses. General building development and design standards, those marry up quite well with your zoning districts in terms of physically the form, what do you want to see? Finally, rules and administration used to be up front. We put it at the back. It's the boring part. So let's throw it at the back. That's the stuff staff cares a lot about. You as the council care a lot about. The general public does not care as much. They just want to be able to do what they want to do. Finally, rules and definitions so that you can understand what's in the document. I was going to go through a lot more of this. I'm not going to. Couple key pieces. One thing I said, we consolidated the number of districts. I think that's the number one thing we did. The number 2 thing that we did, reduce the nonconformity in the city. What we mean by that is, how can we reduce the number of variances you see? How do we make sure that people can actually do what they want to do with their property and make it a little bit easier? Next slide. A couple of the districts we really focused on form. I would say that's Main Street District and also the Town Center District. Next slide. We focused on creating diagrams and tables or tabular formats to make life easier so that you could theoretically take this, give it to somebody, a developer, a builder, a landowner, and say, here is a great snapshot of what you can do based on this district. You can copy just this out. They would know enough to be able to know what kind of project they can do. Next slide. We heard over and over again, Main Street, that sort of core area is about making sure we keep retail, commerce, businesses on the main floor. If we have residential uses, they pop up top. This essentially says those two corridors that are in that pink overlay, if you face the Main Street or Laurel, you also have to respect that, meaning business, commercial, retail on the main floor, residential on top. Once you get out of that Main Street area, residential becomes more of a fair game. Frontage types were on your right-hand side. Those are just the different types of buildings that lend themselves to either retail, business, and commercial uses or residential. In this case, the stoop building is not permitted in Main Street, but it is permitted, all three are permitted in the town center. Next slide. We introduced the idea of a new traditional neighborhood, TN3. None of the properties are zoned this currently. It's a little bit like a PUD with more guidance. So if somebody has a large development area that they would like to bring forward, this is a tool now in your toolbox that you have available. It gives more structure. It talks about street widths, block dimensions, making things more connected, etc. Gives a very good framework, but it's a guideline. So folks still have the ability to come in and come up with what they'd like to do in that particular area. Next slide. Allowed uses, there's a new table of uses in town. Hopefully it's gonna make it a lot easier. You go to the table, is it on the table, yes or no? How's it coded? You know what to do. Next slide. General building and development standards, you actually had quite a few of these pieces already in your code. We made some adjustments to reinforce the zoning districts. And then there were a couple pieces that obviously may still need to be updated, like your parking commission has been hard at work. Off-street parking might need more work once that parking commission tackles a couple more issues. Rules and administration, reduced redundancy. Number one change here, PUD became a zoning district. So if someone's going to do a PUD here, they have to rezone it. Rezoning to PUD documents exactly what you're going to allow within a particular area. It's a little bit different than what you had before, but you did have PUD. So that is not a new concept. It's really just making sure that you rezone it so you can track it, you know, when we're all dead for 50 years from now, as I've been told, to make sure that someone knows what happened. Finally, rules and definitions. Not a whole lot changed. We just reorganized it and also cleaned up some of the definitions. That's all I have. That's as fast as I probably can go over a 150-page document. That was right?
Very good.
I went as fast as I could.
Where was this Jennifer during all these workshops?
Hey.
Any questions of Jennifer, our consultant, or Mr. Chansky? Yes, Gabe Johnson, Chairman Johnson.
I just have one question. It's 15341, allowed uses, warming shelters. It looks to me like warming shelters are becoming an allowed use, despite the fact that when we approved them as an interim use in November, October, whenever it was, we were going to come back in the spring, talk to the police department, talk to the neighborhood, see how it worked and what we could do better moving forward. Now it looks like it's just an allowed use.
Yes.
Without having any discussion.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes, Mr. Chansky.
To respond to Councilmember Johnson, so when you look at this code, it does, the initial look, yes, it could look like that. What this section 515-3 is, it talks about allowable uses. Pretty much these are the uses that are allowed in town, the uses that could exist within the city. But that doesn't mean make it a permitted use. So what you would then do is if you go to the table of uses, you would go to your district, and you can see if you go to the warming shelter, which I believe, shelters, which would we have shelters under? Semi-public services? Shelters were under, warming shelters were under the public, semi-public uses. You'll see the districts that it's allowed in, which would be the general commercial, the commercial corridor, and the town center, the general industrial, and the public and public, semi-public. Those 5 districts, and it's listed as an interim use. So they are still interim use only. So you'd have to, if you want to open a warming shelter in any one of these areas, it would be an interim use. As for the existing warming shelter that is out there, it still does have a condition that it will cease operation by June 1st, and then if they would want to come back, they would have to come get a new interim use permit to continue operating after June 1st.
Please continue.
Yeah, Mr. President, I saw the appendix, and I like that the appendix says it's an interim use, but in 515.3 it doesn't, but many other uses in 515.3 explicitly state it's an interim use permit. warming shelters do not. So it seems the code is at odds with itself. I would just like it to say down in 15.5, 15.3, blah, 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 whatever number, that warming shelters are an interim use. Because that's what we agreed to, and it seems like it's not what we're getting. Mr. President, that's my thought.
Seems to be consistent to have some labeled interim use and not all, would be a little inconsistent.
Mr. President?
Yes, Jennifer.
Could I? So, generally speaking, I actually prefer to take it out of the use-specific standards, as I call them. So that's what those sections like 515-3-41 are. Those are use-specific standards. Typically, the reason I prefer to take them out of there is oftentimes they get missed. And also, if you have a mix of certain districts in interim, certain districts conditional, or certain districts not permitted, it's cleaner to reference the table of uses. So I would agree that we could go through and take a look at this and clean it up in all of them that automatically reference the table of uses. But one of your primary objectives from my perspective is you want to change things once. You don't want to have to change things twice if you decide to update the ordinance in the future. And so it's much easier to update your table of uses when you want to change things than to have to fish through the text and make sure that it's consistent. So it's cleaner if we clean it up in the use section, in the use-specific standards, and keep it accurate in your table of uses, the specific.
Mr. Johnson?
Thank you for the time, Mr. President. I'm not going to vote no because I don't want to have to read the whole ordinance, but I do not support this unless we get an interim use thrown down on the warming shelters. Otherwise, I think we've done a great job of updating, modernizing our zoning code. Thank you, Mr. President.
I'm happy to do it for that then.
Yeah, that could be fixed easily.
Yes.
Thank you.
Sure.
And I actually agree with Mr. Johnson. I think that makes sense. If you're gonna have some labeled, have all of them labeled in that area. Any further discussion or questions? Questions of staff? Yes, Mayor Bedot.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we're taking our time on this. And I understand this is just the first reading of this, but it's 150 pages. And I've been on the council long enough to know that not everybody at this table here read all 150 pages. This is something very specific that is, it's coming with age that I now know that that's the case. I'm at 149 and a half, a couple paragraphs off from finishing this. But I just want to make sure that on this is a very large document with a lot of implications, that's what I said, for the city. And I just want to make sure that we are doing our due diligence with this and that we are looking at the items specifically that are in it, the changes that are being made, and that when we come back and we finish this, that we are okay with what's in there. So if there are issues, I want to make sure that the council is taking the time to read the document and understand the changes that are being made.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Really
Mr.
quickly,
Erickson.
as the liaison to the committee, so I agree with the mayor. It's important to take our time with this. Of course, the committee and myself being the liaison haven't had the benefit of being on the committee 15 months. So we've had that benefit of spending a lot of time going through it. But certainly to take the time, and as you referenced, it's the first reading, we'll have that opportunity. And I think they've done a good job of trying to incorporate the workshops. So I'll second that.
That wasn't a motion. All right, any further discussion? Any further discussion? Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right, back to business. We're looking for a motion to accept the planning commission's recommendation, accept or deny, the proposed zoning code, conduct the first reading of the proposed ordinance of 1527, ordinance amending 515 of the city code and the zoning map, and dispense with the actual reading of the ordinance. And the note, of course, is a vote to dispense with the actual reading of the ordinance must be unanimous.
So move.
Second.
Motion by Tad Erickson, second by Chief Stunek. Any discussion? Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Hopefully by the second reading, we'll get to see the changes suggested by Mr. Johnson. Okay, item G, the first reading of proposed ordinance 1528, an ordinance replacing section 1135 of the Brainerd City Code with updated language, and this is Chief Vestal?
Yes, Mr.
He's got
President.
another title like Paul.
Yeah. Chief, anything you wish to add to what's in the, this is the tobacco and related products, updating new language, addressing T21.
Yes, Mr. President, I don't have anything else. What's,
It seems pretty self-explanatory.
Correct, unless anybody else has any
Thanks for the eternity of working on this. Any questions of the chief to what's in the packet? Hearing none, we are looking for a motion to hold and dispense with the first reading of proposed ordinance 1528.
I make that motion.
Yes, you can.
Second.
An ordinance replacing section 1135 of the Brainerd City Code with updated language on tobacco and related products, dispense with the actual reading, and set the public hearing for April 4th, 2022 at 7:30 PM. We have a motion by Johnson, second by, was it Pritchett? Any discussion on the motion? Chairman
I
Johnson.
just want to thank staff for getting this done. This has been a while in the works, and, you know, after this one, we'll move on to the next one.
Well, thank you very much. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Number 8H, the consideration of the interim use permit for commercial greenhouse to support the operation of Yesterday's Gone Bar and Grill. Mr. Chansky, anything to add?
I'll just add, Mr. Chair, as the packet had to go out before the planning commission actually met, went out about 3 hours before the planning commission actually met. I do have the motion on the recommendation that came out of the planning commission for this interim use permit was a motion, recommendation to approve the interim use permit for a greenhouse to support the operations of Yesterday's Gone Bar and Grill at PID 512415525, contingent on the adoption of the proposed zoning code.
Chairman O'Day.
Can I ask why the contingency?
The contingency, as I did list in your packet, is because Mr. Zelinski is proposing doing his greenhouse with rolled material. The code, as our current code, does not allow for the rolled material. On March 7th, the council directed to have that changed in the new zoning code, which it is. And so what we're just saying is it's reliant on, it's been changed in the new zoning code. So once the new zoning code is approved, then Mr. Zelinski will be within the code and he'll be allowed to build it as he is proposing. But however, under the current code, the rolled material is not allowed.
Mr. Johnson. Well,
I have a motion when you're ready, if you have a question. Go ahead.
I'm gonna go back to Mr. O'Day.
I was under the impression we were changing the current language, not working on the new code. So I don't think that we should be contingent for this greenhouse to be made on something that has nothing to do with his business. I don't think that this is not gonna pass anyway, but why even have it on there? Why not speed it up? Let him start building his greenhouse. It's becoming too much.
Mr. Chansky, I agree with Chairman O'Day. It appears if we approve the Planning Commission's recommendation, we're denying what he wants to do. If we wait 2 weeks, and we can approve it with the to become non-conflicting with our zoning code.
Yes, if it waited until April 4th when you adopt it, yes, you could just say approved. This is saying you are approving it, it's just he can't start construction until the new code is adopted. The option to change, if I can, Mr. Chair, the current code, that would have been an option, however, would have been a much slower option because you would have had to go through the whole ordinance amendment process. 2 readings, you would have had to go through this process anyway, and since we were at this point of changing the code as it is, that's where the recommendation that you took on March 7th was to just have it changed in the new code because it was going to be coming before you tonight for its first reading, and then April 4th for consideration of adoption. So actually, well, that was actually the faster, more efficient route.
Okay. Mr. Johnson? If,
I have a motion, or I can tell you what I would put in my motion that I think would be important.
as long as you can handle the fact that you can't start construction until April 14th, presuming the zoning code is adopted, go for it.
All right, I move to accept and approve the interim use permit request from yesterday's gone and allow Mr. Zelinski to use a double layer of 6mm polyurethane film without any contingencies, and I so move.
Second.
And Mr. Chair, I make that motion because it's inevitable that it's going to be allowed here in a month. Why delay it? We're approving this new code that it is going to be allowed.
Okay. We have a motion by Johnson, a second by O'Day. City Attorney Langle.
Well, just so we're clear, the motion is to approve a permit that violates the current zoning ordinance.
That is what I understand.
That's the
Mr.
motion.
Attorney.
With the understanding that by the time it's constructed, it will not be non-compliant.
Well, that begs the question of whether constructing it itself is a violation of the zoning ordinance. I mean, and maybe the timing isn't an issue for the applicant who's got his hands up here. But
Sorry, you can't talk. We have a motion and a second. Thank you
Yep.
for your opinion, Mr. Attorney. Any further discussion on the motion, which I will be voting against it for a number of reasons, because you didn't do what I asked, is number one. Thank you. Mr. Stunek.
I'm gonna be voting no too, because it seems like we're gonna set ourselves up for something down the road.
Yeah.
And I think this needs to be cleared up in 2 weeks, and it's simple as that.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, Mr. Erickson.
I'm going to vote against it. I was going to vote in favor of the motion as presented in the packet for the similar reasons. So.
Okay. Anybody who hasn't spoken? Okay, Mr.
I
Riddell.
just want clarification, because we just talked about going through that document and taking our time with it. If there are issues that people have within that document, is this a section within that code that can be dealt with separately in 2 weeks? Because if we get to 2 weeks and everyone has problems and we don't approve the zoning changes as a whole, is this something that can be separated?
Well, I believe that's the attorney's point, is that at this point, we would have a little bit of a disaster, potential legal disaster. I don't want to put words in the attorney's mouth. Anybody who hasn't spoken, I think y'all understand the issue. I'm not sure an eternity of discussion is going to fix this. Let's vote, okay, and see where this goes. Y'all heard the motion? This is not a resolution. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
That motion fails. I'm not sure we need a motion on this tonight, but anybody else want to give it a try?
Yeah, I would make a motion to accept the planning commission's recommendation to approve the interim use permit for a commercial greenhouse to support operations at Yesterday's Gone, contingent upon the passage or approval of the zoning ordinance.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Erickson, a second by Stingline. Any discussion on that one? So, Mr. Attorney, if I may ask a question, this new motion allows him the interim use permit. It's just that as of right now, he can't use the plastic, but in 2 weeks, he likely will be able to. Yes? Am I understanding that correctly?
that is my understanding, as long as everything else involved with the structure satisfies the code.
Oh, right, there's a whole bunch of other stuff.
Sure.
Okay?
Yes.
Tiffany, you had your hand up?
No, I believe that was
No?
Kevin.
Kevin, I'm sorry.
I don't see
get
the
you too
difference.
confused.
Let's see, what your hand look like? Okay. I don't see the difference. I mean, still, I think we're opening ourselves up to approve something that's not quite approved yet. And if it's gonna come, I think it'll come back to bite us. I'm gonna vote no.
Okay, I appreciate that. And y'all know I'm voting no on the, because I don't like the plastic. I think the planning commission was correct in denying the plastic, because I've seen the plastic, and I know what it looks like. And I know there'll be some inspection. But theoretically, this allows him to get rolling, I think, is what it does, right now. And just not put the,
As it's gonna snow
yeah,
tomorrow.
right? It's gonna snow tomorrow anyway. Assuming we approve in 2 weeks. Anybody who has not spoke on the motion? Hearing none? Anybody, last call? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign? Aye. And that motion passes, sounded like 4-3, or thereabouts. But it definitely passed.
5-2? Could I,
That-
clarification?
It definitely passed. Can we get a clarification? Call the roll, please.
I was the third, if you want.
Okay, all right, Michael Day was the third. Okay.
Thank you.
I don't
All
like
right.
contingency. That's the point.
You're good to go. Don't put any plastic up till we approve the ordinance, the zoning change.
Yeah, so just build everything except the roof, and maybe we'll let you build a roof later, Steve.
Item I is the consideration of the interim use permit for short-term rental at 704 First Street. Mr. Chansky, anything to add to this one?
I just have the motion that came out of the planning commission, Mr. President, is that they recommend to approve this interim use permit for short-term rental at 704 First Street with 3 contingencies. The first is that it should be re-inspected by the building inspector and fire marshal. The second is that operation shall comply with the most current version of the zoning code. And third, in the event that there's a lapse in rental licensing, the applicant shall be given notice of said lapse and provided an appropriate amount of time to comply with the conditions of this interim use permit.
Thank you. Any questions of staff? Any questions of staff? Hearing none, we're looking for a motion to accept the planning commission's recommendation to approve or deny the interim use permit for a short-term rental at 704 First Street with the contingencies put forth by Mr. Chansky, by the planning commission, actually.
So moved, Mr.
Motion by Erickson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Pritchett. Any discussion? Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of approving the planning commission's recommendation on the interim use permit for short-term rental at 704 First Street, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Next up is the public forum. This is a time allocated for citizens to bring matters not on the agenda. So if we've already talked about it, I apologize. You can't speak on it. Not on the agenda to the attention of the council. We usually ask you to keep it to 3 to 5 minutes. When you come forward, and we'll ask you to state your name and your address. It's not a discussion. You don't get to ask questions. You get to testify. This is your time to give testimony on what you feel is important to the council. If you're online and you wish to speak, you would hit *3. That effectively raises your hand so we can see that you want to speak. And then when I call on you, *6 will unmute you. So we will open the public hearing at 8 minutes to 9 and ask if anybody online or in council chambers wishes to speak on a topic that we haven't discussed this evening. Come forward. Jerry, you get to. So state your name and address.
I'm Jerry Sturwalt. I'm not going to give my full address because it would conflict with what I'm going to do. But I live on North 9th. Mostly because what I'm here to talk about is as a renter. So I don't want to divulge the exact address because it would divulge. And that wouldn't be fair to the other persons.
I'll allow it.
Okay, so recently, I've been having a battle with a landlord, and it showed me a lot of flaws in the codes. The battle started 3 years ago, and it started out as an act of retaliation because I called the city. And the retaliation was he quit shoveling the sidewalk in the winter. Well, I'm disabled. And in those times, during that time, I was using a walker for a long period. I'd been on life support twice. I got out of the hospital, I had to walk through 1.5 feet of snow. Call the city, he'd retaliate again. Now, you know, when renters look online at situations like this, they tell you to call your city housing. You report that to city housing, and that's where it stops. And it shouldn't. It shouldn't because it is against the law to retaliate against a renter. And it's against it, you know, Rick will tell you, a landlord cannot retaliate against you for calling because you refuse to do your job. And so it led to a lot of things. Well, now this just happened again to where part of his retaliation was he quit maintaining, quit repairing stuff he should have. I had to call the city again. Now he's got 2 pages of violations. And yet it stemmed from an act of retaliation. So, you know, this time it was a decrease of service. So because I called the city on him, they locked the laundry room. It's actually a criminal act. And yet there is nothing in city code that addresses that. Nothing. It is a state law, but if a tenant has to go through the state, this takes months and months. And when you look online, they tell you to go to your city housing. You tell the city housing, nothing's done. So part of the flaw in the city code is that, and you know, part of it is throughout this landlord not maintaining the property, it developed a lot of mold. And I've been dealing with that for 3 years. I have serious health issues. I have an allergy to mold. And city had been telling me for 3 years, there's nothing they can do. It's not covered under the codes. And it's not. I've read through every last word of the city code. It's not. But I did kind of resolve that this morning with Darren. It took a lot of hours to find out where it was in the state codes. And it actually violates health violations. And the mold is caused from the lack of maintenance. Now, on both of those issues, my proposal to the city is that they do have to have something in place within their housing department when tenants are retaliated against like that. It is against the law. It's a form of, retaliation is a form of discrimination, the same as harassment. So this is not just my problem. I worked as a housing case manager, and I worked with the mental health population. And there are some great landlords here. But, you know, a lot of the talk lately in the city council has been substandard housing. And it's issues like these that cause some of that. Now, the mold issue that's not covered in the city codes, the battle with the snow, you know, recently I fell and I was injured. Right now, those medical bills are about $7,500, and that's probably going to triple because he did not shovel the snow. I call the city, he retaliates. So my proposal to the city is I have some information here to where somehow they got to get this in the city code. And it's all covered under mostly one statute for the most part. The snow issues are covered in the statutes. I mean, that's part of the Fair Housing Act of Minnesota. It's part of the American Disability Act. So there has to be more bite to that. My landlord hasn't shoveled snow in 3 years. 3 years. Now, so where the specific statute on these, I did talk to Darren about, and you know, he kind of understood where I come from on this. The snow, that's absolutely his job. The mold is lack of maintenance. That comes down to the habitability. It is covered in the codes. It's 504B, what would it be, paragraph 161.
You got a minute.
Yep. And I do want the city to consider getting something in their codes. But they do also need something in there that covers the retaliation acts and a way to address it. Because right now, for tenants to do that, like I said, if they have to go through the state, it's months and months and months when it's a crime. The statute covering the retaliation and covering the snow and everything is here. I would like to leave this with you guys.
Absolutely. Please, bring it up here. Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you.
Okay. Before I ask if anybody else can speak, we have a staff member who would handle rental complaints? Yes?
Correct.
Raise your hand, please. Did Jerry leave? He left. Okay.
My staff has
For
been in contact and working with Mr. Stark.
All right. Okay, perfect. All right, we are still in the public forum. If you are in the building or online and would like to speak, Mr. Yeager, please come forward on an item that has not been on the agenda. Please state your name and address.
Kevin Yeager, 325 Bluff Avenue. I know we're running a little long, so I'll be brief here. A few years ago, starting in the fall of, I guess it would have been 2020, we saw the beautiful holiday signs go up in downtown Brainerd. They look fantastic through the holiday season. Beginning March, they began to lose a little bit of their luster. By midsummer, they looked downright terrible. All right? So I'm here just to real quickly touch upon a quick point. The signs went back up again recently for this holiday season, looked fantastic, but again, about March, they start looking not so great. I made one quick call to Paul Sandy, and I want to just point out a big thank you to Paul Sandy, Public Works Department, because less than 24 hours later, our Public Works Department was down there on a step ladder, changing out the signs that I had asked about just one day prior to. But I would also like to add that I, with a little inquiry, including directly to BPU, I understand that they were asked repeatedly during the summer of the year before, as well as early this spring, to assist getting those signs changed out. And I would just like to say, very disappointed in BPU's reaction to this, very, very disappointed in BPU's unwillingness to just help out with just simple, something small, okay? The bigger question here for me is this is exactly why we do not have government entities acting autonomously within a greater government with virtually no oversight, virtually no accountability, because it leads to a we will get to it when we want to get to it mentality. I would like to ask the council to simply consider if perhaps a policy should be written or at least considered that would allow the truck, the boom truck, and the staff that do not belong to BPU, they belong to the city of Brainerd, to be used or at least reserved or the ability for our Public Works Department to get a hold of that equipment when they need to, schedule it like anybody else would schedule it, but at least have access to that equipment to get just basic stuff done. So a couple things. I wanted to thank Paul Sandy and the Public Works Department for jumping on that. Again, disappointed in BPU. One quick follow-up. I'd like to thank the Charter Commission for recognizing the language that was written in our charter gave way too much power to the BPU, and a swift movement by the Charter Commission, as well as you guys, to take action on some of that. And I'd like to actually see a little bit, like to see that taken a little bit further. We all work for the same people, the taxpayers of the city of Brainerd, and I'd like to see us move forward that way. That's all. Have a good night, guys.
Thank you, Mr. Yeager. You can't clap.
You can't vote for him. We already voted him into everything.
Everything. All right, we are in the public forum. If you wish to speak on an item that has not been currently addressed on the agenda, now's your time. Come forward, state your name and address, and tell us what you think.
Well, we can't speak on the items that have been addressed, but we were.
Please state your name and
Mike
address.
Murphy, Baxter, Minnesota,
Keep
56425. Anyways,
What's the address?
8371 Greenwood Road.
Greenwood, thank you.
I live in Baxter. I don't have any representation in Brainerd. I call the ward people, lift a message, I don't get any response. Call my representatives, I don't get any response there. Call them senators, you don't get any response. Call the governor, you don't get any response to anything. So it's just government getting overwhelmingly, our liberties are getting stolen. And during this code thing, you didn't ask for public to speak when it was up. When do we get to speak on this?
The public forum was at Planning and Zoning, Mr. Erickson? Yep.
I was there,
Yes, and you spoke.
but you guys didn't hear it? Were you there?
No, but it's on TV.
Did you see it?
I saw part of it.
Did you see the whole thing? Well, maybe you guys need to see the whole thing. Because now I can't speak to let you know. Well, I can't say that because that was on forum. But let's go a different route. Do you like Brainerd? Do you think Brainerd is ugly? You think all the houses in Brainerd are ugly? And you don't want any more like that. You want it to be like Minneapolis. Well, maybe that's what you're voting for then. Other things, I guess. Laurel Street, whichever way it is here. You stuck up all these fancy street lights. You can't see any damn buddy walking down that's going to cross the crosswalk. You got too much signs and stuff up there, you can't see them at night. Let's put some street lights so you can see something. We wasted all that money on them. They look pretty. They're non-functional. Then you waste more money by painting the crosswalks with the water towers, and they look absolutely sinful by the week after they're put in. With what you guys are passing, you're driving people out of this city. And it's shameful. You gotta read the stuff that you're passing. We don't want to read this. Heaven forbid we'd have to read what we wrote. You got a big code book there, it's that thick, and the little one that thick. If you rip out half of the stuff in the big book and make some sense of it, you could get it down to that little book and stop restricting us from building what we want. We're just going into communism. We got a communist governor, communist president, won't allow you to take and evict somebody that you didn't even rent to. I got a property that did over $20,000 I lost because of our communist governor.
Mr. Murphy, can you wrap it up in a minute?
Yeah. By not being able to speak on what we have here, you pretty much eliminated everything I have to say. Which is wrong. It's freedom of speech. Our liberties are gone. You're taking them away from me and the people. We the people are sick of it. Stop restricting us. Don't pass this code.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Anybody else, either online, what do we got online, Sean?
Just staff. Phone number is Chris.
I'm seeing nothing. Okay, we'll ask one last time. Anybody who wishes to speak at the public forum for items that were not currently discussed this evening. Hearing none, it is 9:04, what is that? No, 9:09. We will close the public forum and move on to staff reports. We'll start over with our city attorney Langell. Anything to tonight?
Mr. President, just one thing. Back in December, the council passed some changes to the city charter concerning the park board and BPU in terms of how the relationship between the city administration and those entities. Those changes will become effective at the beginning of May. I just wanted to indicate that it would be appropriate at some point here to have the council direct staff to make modifications to the personnel policy and perhaps some city code provisions that are not consistent with those changes. It needs to be all worked together in the end. And certainly right now, as the personnel policy stands, that it's going to require some changes to be consistent with that new charter language. And I suspect there's probably a few pieces of the city code that are in the same position.
Is this something that staff does and then brings to like P&F, Gabe?
We'll handle it.
Well, you know what? Chief, do you mind making a motion to direct staff to make the modifications to our, what is it, the employee handbook?
The personnel policy.
The personnel policy and direct it to P&F?
I make a motion, we send this information to P&F to take a look at the personnel policy for further notice.
Right, and staff to work on that.
Staff recommendations.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by O'Day. Any discussion? Y'all understand what the attorney's asking for? I mean, it makes sense. Any further discussion? Hearing none? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, same sign. And that'll go to P&F, Gabe, then, okay? Anything else, Mr. Langell?
Nothing further, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chansky.
Just have one thing, Mr. President, kind of an exciting thing, and since I'm going before Paul, I'm going to steal it. If you guys, today, if you went down East River Road, you'll see the first improvements for the Mississippi Land Trailhead Park have gone underway, as in we had some crews down there clearing out some trees so you can get a nice, good view of the Mississippi River. So if you drive by there, probably even tonight, you'll actually be able to see the Mississippi River from the road. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
All right. Mr. Sandy, City Engineer, Public Works Director for life.
I have nothing now.
What?
It took us one item.
Wow.
Preacher Paul.
Mr. Chansky kind of set the bar with about 75 ordinances tonight. I understand. Finance Director Hillman? IT Director Strong?
Nothing.
Chief Bestel? Administrator Bergman?
I have 25 updates.
I make a motion, we don't accept that.
I just have a couple. The mayor and I presented to the Lakes Area Unlimited Learning, and I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, if I'm stealing yours. We had a session with them in Crosby. It was a Brainerd Then and Now session, and the mayor and I handled the now. So that was kind of fun. The city engineer, public works director Sandy and I were on WJJY Community Focus last week. Visit Brainerd presented at our Lunch and Learn, sharing with city staff all of the events and activities happening in the Brainerd Lakes area. And one of the things I'm really excited to share is that we actually had a record attendance for that Lunch and Learn. We had 53 people who had signed up, so a lot of interest in that. Then last, but certainly not least, the mayor and I also attended the county board committee of the whole meeting, where Country Manor did present to them asking or requesting tax abatement. It was a work session type setting, so no direction was, or no motions were made. The direction to county staff was that they wanted a little bit more research on tax abatement. And that concludes my report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, and I skipped over, once again, HRA Director Charpentier with us online. Eric, anything to add?
Yeah, you get bad lift.
Well, I apologize, Eric, if you're with us, we can't hear you. Mr. Mayor, the Honorable Mayor.
Oh, the
David
honorable.
Bedeau.
Second time tonight I've been called honorable. I'd appreciate it if that happened more. We're going to start off right away by just calling out the coalition of coordination over here, the blue suits over here, as we'll call them. Gotta love just the way these guys came in, looking real fancy. But then, boom, right here next to me walks in maybe the best suit of the night. So the other night we talked about one Kevin Yeager being in here in a suit. He's in here again with a suit. I said that type of activity bleeds out. It is the best suit of the night, except for the fact that this guy's got the tie. Beside the point. The point is, good-looking crew in here. Good-looking crew, everyone that's come, and I appreciate it. Thank you, Kevin, for making these people step up. I'm not wearing a suit. It's not happening. Just a couple of quick little bits of information. We want to talk about the tree removal, obviously, down at the Mississippi. Get a look down there. I got a little peek today. It looks really good. But I want to bring up something, that park that's down there, there have been some requests coming from individuals in the historical community to name that park when we actually deem it parkland after the individual who originally gave us the land. And I would like the city council to hear that request, maybe hear a little information about the individual and about why it's so important. And so at some point here, if you would be interested, I would like to ask maybe Carl Faust to come give us a little presentation on that. I think that would be informative for everyone involved. Next, park board meeting tomorrow, 4 p.m. right here, City Council. See you there. Lastly, really important, next Tuesday, I believe, the 29th, at 6 p.m. right here in Council Chambers will be the Highway 210 Business Owner Aesthetic Workshop. So I know you don't want me to announce that, but you're here.
I'm staying.
You're here.
I want to get a good seat.
You're going to be here for the entire time. So just if you're out there as a business owner on 210, or anyone in the public, you are all welcome. That's going to be an important meeting to come to and just get a good workshop type scenario where we can hear what the public is interested in, because that is going to be a generational change here in our city, and it's important that voices are heard. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let's start down on this end. Tiffany Stangline.
Nothing tonight?
Chief Stunek.
As the liaison to the center and community action, thank you for the funding.
I ain't over yet.
Can you top that, Gabe?
The bluebird of happiness, Chairman Johnson.
The no guy.
I attended a park board meeting this last month. They were kind of doing a long-term vision for J.C.'s Park, and they're kind of starting their master planning that they're going to get into in future years. But it was an excellent meeting. I was glad to be invited, and I think there's some really good ideas, and J.C.'s Park will be improved for the better moving forward. Mayor, you dropped the ball. My son finished in second place in the St. Patrick's Day parade, or St. Patrick's Day costume competition. It was a great event downtown, great parade. Thanks to all the downtown business owners and Brainerd Community Action for putting that on. And finally, I was surprised to learn we aren't having a public hearing on the zoning code. I know they did one at Planning and Zoning, and that meets the bare legal requirements, and that's all good and everything. But it's a pretty big change that maybe a second public hearing would be in order, but we didn't order one, so it is not. Thank you, Mr. President.
I believe we could. We have enough time to publish it. I actually don't think that's a dumb idea.
Yep.
Mr. Chansky, any reason why we can't? We often have a public hearing at the second reading.
So I was conferring with the city attorney. Generally, you need a 10-day notice, but because the planning commission held the official one, the deadline to have it in the Wednesday paper was today at noon. But we could still do one and have it in the Sunday paper, or ask Teresa to post it earlier and do a write-up and still do one if you would like. Because we did the official one, the 10-day period doesn't apply.
As a
I think that's a good idea.
Thank you, Mr.
It is
President.
a big change. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Anything else?
Need a motion to that effect or not?
Nope,
Okay.
we don't. Mr. O'Day?
I have nothing to add, other than maybe some top hats and canes.
Putting on the Ritz.
Maybe next time.
Mr. Yeager? Can you handle that as part of the parking commission?
He's in charge of every committee.
Yeah.
He's gonna be the mayor
Sign
next
up for
week.
that. Mr. Pritchett?
I just enjoy the weather. Not even a month ago, we were under 3-4 feet of snow, and now you can actually hear some birds and see some grass and get out there and enjoy it.
Thank you. Mr. Erickson?
Northland Arboretum Board of Directors meets this Thursday. I'll be the liaison to that. I actually can't attend the meeting. I've got a conflict, but I'm sure they'll be curious about the additional clarification going back to the Charter Commission. So I'll follow up with them prior to that meeting.
Excellent. Anything else?
That's it.
All right, and in Ward 2 this last week, I attended the Fish Fry at St. Francis Church for 125 years. They've been sitting there on the corner of 8th and Ivy, is that where it is?
Juniper.
Juniper. And the fish fry is fantastic. If you haven't gone, go.
I think he was the only one standing on the other street.
All right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.